It's Buckeyes Live, everyone. We've done this now 210 times. Hopefully you've been here. And if not, you know what? You're here now. That's what counts. Join us for the next 60 to talk Buckeyes football right here at the Voice of College Football. Lock it in. We are typically here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, but we've got 4 schedules to coordinate. Therefore, subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. We've got the spring game in the rearview mirror. We've got the NFL draft coming up starting on Thursday night. And of course, we've got recruiting. The months of May and June are big for high school football camps. We've got Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports right next to me. Below is Kevin Noon, Buckeye Huddle. Also join him on his podcast, The Big Me Kickoff, and Tony Gerdeman. Yes, Steve will help us with the directions. Caddy corner to me. Buckeye Huddle. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast and the college football playbook right here on YouTube. What's going on today?
Nothing much.
Do you guys get any kind of relief after spring practice is over?
Nope. A little bit. I've been sleeping in a little bit here and there. Yeah, I've been kind of a bum. Although I used to work for a guy at a newspaper, covered Ohio State, and he's like, don't let your summer slip away. So I'm trying to let those words kind of ring in the back of my head, because before we know it, we'll be piling into the car to go to Indianapolis for the preseason meetings, and that'll be that. So, oh well, still 3 months till that. So we're doing good.
It's the second best time of the year. Football season is the best. Then after spring until media days. Did we miss 2 weeks ago the 4-year anniversary? Then I guess if this is show 210, then 208 would have been the fourth.
We absolutely did.
Wow, 4 years.
Tony, you're the numbers guy. You should have caught that.
If I'm the numbers guy here, this is pretty scary.
Is it really? Well, you try. You certainly apply a lot of numbers. Yes, you're not a math guy by inherently, but it seems like you do your best. Absolutely. Good stuff. Yes, it seems similar to my old gig where the summers used to be for the first several years that I was there. We're showing bass fishing on ESPN2 and Kiana's Flex Appeal, and it seemed to be like we could kick back for a few months, but then they seemed to throw any live event that anybody that could breathe and run and jump in any such way to play any athletic competition, then the live events fill the entire season, and the College World Series is now practically played in July. So yeah, that kind of went away real quick. All right, let's talk some NFL draft and CJ Stroud, Steve. We talked to Tom Luganbill a couple days ago, did a 2-part series. If anyone would like to check that out, it was a great conversation. And, he said something similar to what we talked about a few weeks ago in regards to people get enamored with the athlete. They get enamored with the athlete, but there is something about playing the quarterback position that's different than edge rusher or corner, where it's like, okay, pure athleticism, we can teach this guy to play. And there's something about, decision-making and precision at that quarterback position that should be paramount.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And what we've seen here over the last 2 or 3 weeks has been one of the great concerted smear campaigns in NFL draft history. And I can't figure out if it's the agent of another player or if it is, say, a team drafting below the top 1 or 2 picks that have really tried to make CJ Stroud out to be the public enemy number 1 in terms of the quarterback position. But, I think people who are rational and smart will see through that. I think he's going to end up in the top 2 picks. I don't know that he's going to go number 1 to Carolina, although there was a time not all that long ago when Carolina seemed to be most enamored with CJ Stroud. He was very good at the combine, excelled at his pro day. And his tape, doesn't lie. He played one of the best games of his career against Georgia. They just didn't happen to win that game. And that was no knock on him. He was 23 of 34 that day, 4 touchdowns, and didn't throw an interception. So I think he is going to be in the top 2 in the draft, probably the Houston Texans number 2. Beyond that, you're talking about Jackson Smith, the Jigba, Paris Johnson will also be right there in the first round. But the line that I keep coming back to is, I've been around him informally. I attended every game he played in person, covered all of his interview sessions. I can't think of any really blatant red flags when it comes to CJ Stroud. And, the jury's still out on Justin Fields, whether he's going to be a real legitimate winner as an NFL starting quarterback. But I hate to put a can't miss tag on a guy, but Stroud to me looks like a can't miss. But then again, I thought Fields was amazing. Of course, the Bears haven't surrounded Fields with much help, so that's really kind of driven down what he's been able to do in his first 2 years. But wherever Stroud goes, hopefully they'll surround him with the coaches and the players and the help that he needs to really flourish starting out his NFL career. So that's my first blush on it. Congratulations to whoever has orchestrated this smear campaign. They have gone above and beyond this time. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, I mean, we get into, like, in NASCAR, you have the silly season. Well, we're in the stupid season of the NFL draft right now, as players are getting destroyed, and in terms of the smear campaigns that Steve referenced, and this S2 cognitive test being out there, and then the founder of the test saying that these numbers are not right. I mean, not necessarily saying whose aren't right. 18, an 18 on the test, or the 18th percentile. Either way, not very good. We've seen Joel Klatt come to CJ Stroud's defense. We've seen Ryan Clark come to CJ Stroud's defense. We've seen a lot of people out there, but the problem is that you have a lot of quote unquote draft people that I think do this stuff for all the wrong reasons and are highly partisan in who it is they like, or however that may work. And I think they all feed off of one another in terms of what the narrative is that they are putting out there. But I will save all the rest of the red meat on CJ Stroud for Tony or for later in this discussion. As Steve mentioned, JSN and Paris Johnson both could be first-round picks, but I also believe that DeJuan Jones is somebody that could sneak into the first round. I've seen a lot of buzz there. I mean, if he does, it would be late, bottom 4 picks of the first round, in my opinion. A lot of questions out there about, where does Zach Harrison fit in? Where does Luke Whippler fit in? It's a very thin center draft. I've seen Whippler as like the 3rd center off the board, but what is that for? Does that get you in the 4th round? I mean, the center is not necessarily a position that goes highly, but taking all the Ohio State stuff off the board, I think I'm most interested in seeing all this talk about Will Levis, a backup quarterback at Penn State that couldn't throw the ball against the Buckeyes, had a couple of big runs, and transfers to Kentucky. Hardly sets the world on fire, and some Redditor putting out there that Will Levis is going number 1. So once again, somebody woke up and chose violence, or at least chaos, and here we sit. And now I hand it off to Mr. Gerdeman.
I mean, that whole Reddit thing is crazy, to be able to move the line from like plus 5,000 to plus 400 or whatever, that he's going to be the number 1 pick. I've said it before, here, there, everywhere. When it comes to quarterbacks, the NFL and the GMs, like, they get lost in their imagination, because you see CJ Stroud, you see what he is, and he's already what he's going to become. Essentially, like, he is a finished product in terms of he has reached his full self as a college player. So you have a pretty good idea of what he's going to be as a quarterback in the NFL. Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, like, they've got so much potential and you haven't seen it yet. So you get lost in the imagination of, just imagine if he hits on everything and he takes it to the 10th floor. And how often does that happen? And it's rare. And I think I've talked on here before, and other places, that in the last 15 years, the NFL has completely bombed on quarterback picks in the top 5 because they get lost in these measurables rather than the results. And you're even seeing the 49ers right now finally come to finally like wake up and choose Brock Purdy over Trey Lance. And if these were draft eligible guys, they would take Trey Lance again. But now that they've got them both on the roster and they've seen them perform, they've surprisingly taken the guy who performed way better in college and way more in college than Trey Lance, who was a 1-year flash as a redshirt freshman. And so now it's like, oh, you know what? We should actually choose reality rather than living in a land of make believe. Like when it comes down to it, I think the good thing for the NFL is it doesn't cost you much anymore to make a mistake on a first round quarterback or a top 5 quarterback. It used to devastate you because of the way the contracts were. Now it's just, you know what, we'll be done with this guy in 4 years, and it's never going to cost us more than 25 or 30 million in total. And so it's not a devastating thing, but maybe that's why it gets they're even worse now, because they don't have to be right, because they can just look at the Cardinals. They went Josh Rosen and then they went Kyler Murray like back to back. So these guys can go willy-nilly right now, and if you miss it 1 year, hey, next year we might get Caleb Williams.
I'm going to steal a question from the chat, but
hang on 1 second. Can I get Tony? What was that tweet that you put out there that this is the time of the year where we don't worry about what a guy can do? We're only concerned with tearing him down on what he can't do, or something like that. How was that worded?
Pretty much, yeah. It's the mystery is so much better than the reality, and it's
wondering about what people can't do.
Yeah, instead of appreciating
focusing on what they can.
Yeah. And you've seen that with because when it's like whenever I go to some place that's not Chipotle and I try to get a Chipotle bowl, like in order, like what I would get at Chipotle. When these guys are looking at their quarterbacks, like just imagine if Anthony Richardson was as accurate as CJ Stroud. Oh man, that would be great. Let's draft Anthony Richardson, because what if he does become as accurate as CJ Stroud? Meanwhile, Chipotle is right over here, like, hey, we make a mean bowl too. And that's what CJ Stroud is.
We do it the same way every time, and it's always right, and it's always good. Why would you ever go to Hothead? But whatever. All apologies to Hothead people.
And now the Hothead sponsorship deal has fallen through. Thanks a lot, guys.
I will say Chipotle used to be much better like 5-10 years ago, but also, it's still okay. It's still fine.
I'm sorry, Mark.
Well, it's all anyone has to do is watch NFL football. And if you have your favorite analyst who knows what they're talking about, realize that those guys that have 5 and 10 year careers in the NFL and are really good and earn a lot of money, they have their faults too. And they will continue to have those weaknesses, and they still are viable players, starting players, winning players, because we can pick all of them apart to some degree. Absolutely. Yeah, again, to take from Ryan's question in the chat, and we're going to get to your super chat, Ryan. Thank you so much for that, and apply it to the Ohio State team. But I'm going to apply it to the NFL draft selections. Who do we think has made a leap, or who has regressed outside of CJ Stroud in regards to draft status since they last left the field against Georgia?
Yeah, I think DeJuan Jones, as Kevin said, I keep seeing him as like a fringe first rounder, and I think once he got to the combine and once scouts actually got to be with him physically and see him and then watch him and see his feet, I think he's impressed a lot of people. It's a deep tackle draft at the top half, I guess. So, whenever I do my mock drafts, I can never get the Bears to get DeJuan Jones in the second round because he's always well gone, and it's frustrating. But I wouldn't be surprised if he moves up and is in the first round. It is interesting, as Kevin also said, like the center situation with Luke Whippler. Is it a good decision to leave and then be a third or fourth rounder? I guess. I mean, would you have been a second rounder if he comes back? Maybe I don't know. And if you're already the top center, but nobody. If it's a bad center class, nobody's going to like reach up and overdraft you when they can just get you in the next round. But I would say in terms of guys who have hurt themselves, Ronnie Hickman. Zach Harrison has refused to do a lot of stuff like in the pro day and the senior bowl. Like, so I don't think he had an opportunity to really help himself. And I don't think he did any of that.
I'll take this a little more national in terms of guys that have gone up and gone down. Hendon Hooker has really moved up, the Tennessee quarterback. I've seen him mocked in the middle of the first round on some recent mock drafts. I mean, remember he got hurt late in the season, and then Tennessee kind of fell off the table and had to ride the talented arm of Joe Milton at that point. I'll let Chaos down there. As for guys that I think have slid a little bit, I think Michael Mayer, the tight end at Notre Dame, who was supposed to be this de facto number 1 tight end and up at the top now, there's a lot of debate whether or not it's him or it's Dalton Kincaid, the Utah tight end. You have teams like Dallas that are certainly looking at tight end, and Dallas could have its pick of either of them at that point. I've seen Dalton Kincaid moving off of there. Obviously I'm staying away from anybody that's had some legal issues off of there. And one other player that I think that has really seen his stock go up is Texas running back Bijan Robinson, because there's always the great debate whether or not you should use a 1 or a high 1 for a running back. You have Jerry Jones coming out and saying they maybe overdrafted Zeke a little bit when they picked him at 4. I'm looking at who's drafted. Charles Davis's latest draft on NFL.com, and he has Bijan Robinson going 10 to the Eagles. So somebody that has certainly seen his stock go up.
Tyree Wilson getting bumped up above Will Anderson at this point is a little bit of a surprise, but they're different players. One is a rush outside linebacker. The other's a NFL-sized 4-3 defensive end.
Come on,
I'll say on DeJuan Jones, our network, CBS, for whatever reason, doesn't have him listed really high on its overall prospect rankings, which are typically pretty much up to date. I mean, with whatever they're looking at and thinking, they've got him like down in the 70s or 80s somewhere, which would be a 3rd round pick. So I think he went to the Senior Bowl, had that big splash, did pretty good at the combine, and didn't do anything at the pro day. And I wonder if maybe some of that has impacted his stock a little bit. Zach Harrison is kind of a head scratcher. So is Cameron Brown. He's basically fallen entirely off the chart. CBS has him down in the 300s somewhere. There will not be 300 players drafted, I don't think. What's 7 times 32 is like 225 guys or thereabouts are going to get drafted. So, give or take, I think 228 might be the actual number. I don't know off the top of my head, but he seems like he's going to be an undrafted free agent. There's going to be several in that boat coming out of Ohio State. But Luke Whippler, probably 3rd round pick as a center. Is that where he wanted to go coming out a year early? Could he have gone even higher with 1 more year at Ohio State? Possibly. So yeah, there's some other guys, probably 7 guys will get drafted, and we'll see. Maybe somebody will take a late round flyer on Mitch Rossi as this year's Nate Ebner or whatever, going to New England as a 10-year special teams guy. But who knows?
I would take Rossi over Hickman or Cam Brown. In terms of a more, I would pick him to be a more viable, longer lasting NFL player. Now it has to be for the right team that needs a fullback, but.
And talking centers, believe it or not, it's already come out and been said that next year is going to be a much stronger center draft for those that follow center drafts. But so you come back another year and you are what you are, and you don't hurt your stock, but you have better guys above you, and then you slide down by results of that. So I think it all has to be kind of calculated at that point. Again, I've seen Whippler as the 3rd or 4th center in this class. Could he have been the 5th or 6th next year? Potentially. Center is not necessarily there are not a lot of Nick Mangolds out there in the world that just kind of take a tour de force.
So, folks, if you're into center drafts, you can file that one somewhere between the Olajuwon and Ewing drafts, I guess. All right, we got Ryan Doss. Thank you so much for the contribution, Ryan. We appreciate that. And Ryan is asking basically, so we're in a situation where there's a bit of a mystery as to what goes on between the end of spring practice and the beginning of August camp. players get better. They can obviously build up their bodies, take what they learned in spring practice and keep working. And it's more of a 24/7 job than it ever before. So who wants to take first crack at who could take a leap this summer? This is how I'm interpreting it in regards to player progress.
I'll jump in. I think that it has to be somebody on the offensive line because of the fact of where the last time we saw them. And, I'm not completely indicting the line and saying it was bad, but it certainly looked like a line that had 3 potential new starters. And, we haven't necessarily gotten into what could happen in the portal, et cetera, but I'm going to say Carson Hinsman. I'm going to say I'm team center today. So we're going to go there. And I think the biggest knock on Carson Hinsman is that he just doesn't have the sheer number of going through the reps. So I think that it's something that he's going to spend his summer not on the farm up there in Wisconsin, but he's going to spend it snapping the football. And I think that he's somebody that certainly could make a leap this summer. And again, you don't know what you don't know. It's not like they're going to get an organized, offense versus defense line type of situation. You got your blocking assignments and everything else, but I think he just needs the sheer mechanics of just going through it. I mean, Ohio State certainly identified him pretty early on as somebody who could be in the center rotation. And, Jacob James was hurt. Vic Cutler, he's certainly in the mix, but I think Carson, I'm going to say Carson Hinsman.
Josh Fryer's got to be one of these guys who makes a big leap, I think. He was decent, okay in the spring, but he needs to be great in the fall for them to have a chance. Maybe some of those freshmen like Carnell Tate was pretty good in the spring. Maybe he gets even better, and it's to the point where Brian Hartline can't deny him, and maybe he takes some plays away from a Julian Fleming or even a Mecca Buka or somebody. That's kind of far-fetched to see, but and Xavier Johnson's also in that mix too. But maybe one of those young wide receivers will step up and show that they deserve to be in the top 4 or 5. So that's a possibility. Beyond that, just getting guys back healthy. Steele Chambers, Xavier Johnson, Tommy Eichenberg, all coming back, after missing, all or most of the spring, all being counted on to play heavy roles this fall. So maybe we'll see, one or more of them make that kind of, a return that they need to make to get back in the flow there.
It's funny that you guys start out with Carson Hinsman and Josh Fryer, because I'm immediately thinking Zen Mahalski or Tegra Shabola at right tackle. Like, one of those guys needs to step up and not just fend off the other guy, but probably fend off the transfer portal guys that will be coming in, guys coming in. So that's also a position Josh Fryer could be playing if they can find a left tackle to bring in. So if one of those guys wants to play, they're going to have to step up big time this summer. I would also just say overall, defensively, talking to the guys, and I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, now that they're in the defense for the second year in a row, they should all make a leap in this defense. Josh Proctor, this is his 6th year. This is the first time he's been in the same defense 2 years in a row. To give you an idea of how crazy the defensive systems and things have been at Ohio State. So now that they all know the defense, we saw the results in the spring. The secondary is getting to the ball more. Everybody knows what they're doing. Jack Sawyer isn't going to be torn between 2 positions. He's going to just be playing one. Everybody's going to have a better understanding of their role. So in terms of whether that means a leap this summer or just a leap in the season, I think you can expect the defense to be better, but it may always just come back to this offensive line. And are we foolish for assuming the quarterbacks are going to be fine? That's every year Ryan Day's been at Ohio State, he's had the all Big Ten quarterback. I would expect that to continue as long as he finds a starter who is good enough to start and play, because the numbers are going to be there because the weapons are there. So I think Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, both of those guys will have to continue to make a jump this summer.
Gregory says here, every Voice of College Football channel should have a show of this quality. I'm a guy with like 15 children in this case, so I can't say anything. We'll just let the comments stand on the screen. So I posted it, so that'll tell you something. So absolutely, Gregory, great job by Tony, Kevin, and Steve each and every week. We appreciate it. As Tony mentioned off the top, we have passed the 4-year mark. So we hope that all of you appreciate what these guys bring to the table, because they are slammed with work and things to do and other commitments, and they show up here every week to talk Ohio State football.
But Mark, you have a black sheep show. Like, there's a show you're like, oh, you don't bring them out in public,
Everyone can take their guess. Is there only one?
A lot of blue and yellow on that one.
I've got a list, changing the topic here. I've got a list of recruits here that are high on the board. I don't want to bypass Tony and Steve, of course, but I just tend to lean Kevin first and foremost on the recruiting front. Kevin, I'll throw out a player. You let me know where you think the lean is, any other information concerning their trajectory. And if you're not familiar, which I'm guessing you are, but at the same time, don't want to put you on the spot, so we can keep
You're
going.
You're totally putting me on the spot. We did not discuss this in the pre-show meeting.
Of course we didn't. Okay, this is going to be the pre-show meeting default bullet item is going to be Kevin comments on recruiting targets. Go. Bryce West, number 4 cornerback in the nation.
I really still feel good about Ohio State's chances there. I know that Michigan has really put a lot of investment in terms of trying to get back inside the Glenville pipeline, but I don't see it being the case there. I will believe that Ohio State will lose a target that it wants out of Glenville to Michigan. When I see it, it has been a long time since that has happened.
Who was the last guy?
From Glenville?
I mean, that Ohio State really wanted, because remember, like, Frank Clark went to Michigan, but Ohio State didn't really pursue him, and Frank Clark is still making a lot of plays in the NFL.
Willie Henry, I don't know that Ohio State really went after him. There was Lamar Woodley. Did he go to Glenville? And then Pierre Woods, maybe. But
there was a moment in time where there were top Glenville guys getting out, and that was around the Woodley Pierre Woods time, but it's a different era right now.
As Steve would confirm as much as anyone, cornerbacks need cornerbacks, quality cornerbacks. Aaron Scott, number 7 cornerback in the nation, second-rated player in the state.
Yeah, there are a lot of people trying to pencil him into Michigan too, but I still feel very strongly about Ohio State's chances. I think that people sit there and see that, his head coach, Mo Douglas, has certainly had kids go to Michigan, including his own kid. But Aaron Scott has said all the right things in terms of to Ohio State, from what I'm hearing. Do I feel better about West or Scott at this point? I guess if we're talking about absolutes, I'll still say West, but I still think Scott ends up at Ohio State, and that's a pretty strong feeling there.
Jeremiah McClellan is the 31st rated wide receiver in the country, according to this service, 5th rated player in the state of Mizzou.
Well, you're just throwing all of the softballs to me. I like Ohio State's chances there with Jeremiah McClellan joining a class that already has Jeremiah Smith and has I'm thinking about
Mylan Graham.
Mylan Graham. Jeremiah McClellan is going to be the 3rd receiver in that class. I don't see anybody surpassing Ohio State there. Strongest degree of certainty.
Damarian Witten, 18th rated tight end.
Yeah, I like him going to Ohio State too. Another Cleveland Glenville Tarbloodder. Ohio State has been involved very early there with the jumbo athlete, as Ohio State looks to be taking 2 tight ends in this class. When you look at Witten, though, he's just kind of that supersized athlete. He would join Max LeBlanc in the class at the tight end position, but that one feels pretty good too.
All right, I'm going to default to another list to see if we can catch Kevin and make him think a little bit here. Do we go Dylan Stewart, second-rated player at the edge position?
Once we start moving into defense, especially defensive line, there was a moment of where you didn't want to bet against Larry. You didn't want to bet against him in terms of landing guys, and it hasn't necessarily. We haven't necessarily been living in that space as much, but Ohio State certainly was a team that was very much involved there. But I think at this moment I'm going to take the field on Dylan Stewart. I need to see a little bit more there in terms of where they are in terms of recruiting him. I still think Ohio State's going to be just fine in terms of its defensive line recruiting, but I could see Stewart getting away.
Yeah, I know our network has Alabama, South Carolina, and Georgia as kind of the co-favorites on him. Where is he from originally? Is he from Georgia or where is he from?
Not
off the top of your head.
Not off the top of my head. I'm lucky to. If a kid goes to IMG, they're from Bradenton, Florida, in my opinion. At that point,
Yeah.
I can't do 6 degrees of separation.
Okay, IMG kid. So.
Well, no, he's not. I'm just using that as an example.
Dylan Stewart, Friendship
right
Collegiate Academy, Washington, D.C.
But if he was, I don't know if you were insinuating he was somewhere before he went to D.C. I don't know.
Oh, I did. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what that really means in terms of, so there's no geographical pull keeping him any one place or the other. Ohio State's got to get him on campus. That's the big thing. And if they get him on campus, which I think he does have a visit to OSU scheduled, then it would mean the world. To get him would be a huge coup because we talk 90% of the recruiting talk surrounding Ohio State is on the offensive side of the football. The defense, I don't want to say it's neglected, but it's what's a synonym for neglected? It's not attended to very well. So it hasn't been, and it's just not been strong. And a lot of that's to do with the revolving door of coaches other than Larry Johnson on that side of the ball. Going back to those 2 corners, the point I wanted to make was Tim Walton. And Tim Walton is a former NFL assistant coach. And I think that should carry some weight. Hopefully in his second year, he'll be able to land some top flight cornerbacks who see the value in being coached by an NFL assistant coach. So maybe that'll help that cause a little bit. I had thought about that. And as Kevin was talking, I forgot about that. And then I just remembered.
Well, Dylan Stewart being a DC guy, like that used to be a lockdown area, a good area for Larry Johnson. And it was pretty good this last class as well, but it's still the negative recruiting that goes on. It can be difficult to overcome, and also then the NIL space as well.
Buckeye fan Bill, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate you being here. Charles Lester's a cornerback out of the state of Florida who visited campus this spring and has an official visit on June 16th.
Yeah, Charles Lester is certainly an interesting kid who cut his list down to 4 or so, but that one is trending all Florida State, in my opinion. I mean, do you get to the point of being able to get him on campus for the visit? I mean, as Steve said, and it's always been said in the industry, you got to get him on campus, and once you do that, you take a swing and see what happens. But that one seems to be a little bit of a long shot, in my opinion. So yeah.
And why don't we finish up with this one, because offensive line recruiting has obviously been a sore spot in recent years. Brandon Baker's the top-rated player at his position, offensive tackle out of California.
Yeah, that one, I think people were a little bit surprised when they saw that he was going to take an official to Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State has been trying to recruit modern day out of Orange County, Santa Ana, for years. The last kid they've gotten out of modern day was Nikki Sualua, so we're talking a long time ago, but they look like they're in pretty decent shape with Zabian Brown. I'll believe that one when I see it. But Brandon Baker would be visiting at the same time. You never know, but I'm going to say Oregon at this point.
For Sue's case, or for her sake and for her case, I guess, KJ Bolden, number 1 safety in the country.
Yeah, Ohio State has recruited very well at Buford through the years where he goes to school. Bolden is a hell of a player. He's had some times where he's supposed to get up to campus and it hasn't happened. I mean, it's a 9-hour drive from Atlanta. I've made the drive many times through the years. I really see that one being an Ohio State Georgia battle. I mean, people are going to try and put Clemson in the mix as well, but I think it's an Ohio State Georgia battle. At this point, I'm not ready to make a call on it. I know that these are non-binding things, but then again, they are binding because I will hear about it if I pick a kid somewhere and it doesn't happen. So I'm going to take the coward's way out and say coin flip.
Buckeyes Live, folks, typically on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Bring some friends with you, whether that be 2 or 3 or 50. We would love that each and every week. We are here at some point, typically Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Please subscribe and turn on those notifications. That way you know when the schedule hits. Ferris, appreciate you being here. Are we underestimating Penn State? Do they deserve a seat at the table?
The kids' table.
No, that's disrespectful. I was just looking
Tony,
at.
if you do, I'm sorry, if you do Michigan Mondays, should you do like a Penn State Tuesday morning or something, or Penn State Tuesday middle of the night or something? I don't know. Go ahead.
There were some thoughts a few years back that I should be doing Michigan State Monday instead of Michigan Monday, the way those two rivalries are going, and people were correct about that. But if you look at Penn State's schedule, I mean, it's pretty good for them. Their non-conferences, it's West Virginia to open up, and then it's Delaware and like some other Delaware-like program, UMass. So and the biggest road game they have is at Ohio State. They've got to go to Maryland, but they've got Michigan at home. Michigan kind of lucks out and doesn't have to play during a whiteout because, well, maybe they'll still choose to use that as a whiteout, but it'd be during the day, which isn't as effective because they play November 11th, unless, we'll see that. I don't think we'll see it as a night game, but, they go to Illinois third week of the season. They should be okay. Go to Northwestern, should be okay. Go to Maryland. So, like, they finish the season at Michigan State, but honestly, I could see them being favored in 9 or 10 games, maybe even 11, everything except for maybe that Ohio State game, depending on how Drew Aller plays. And I think everybody's, they've got really good running backs and they've recruited well and they've got guys around Drew Aller, assuming they've got some receivers at this point. But they're putting a lot of stock in Aller and his former 5-star guy, so why not?
They lose a lot. They do lose a lot on that team in the secondary, losing Joey Porter Jr., etc. I mean, obviously Abdul Carter is the heart and soul of that defense. And Ohio State, I mean, it is a pretty big sin that Abdul Carter comes to Ohio State looking for an offer and Ohio State does not offer him. I mean, for God's sake, at least get involved in that one, because I'm not saying that they would have landed the Pennsylvania product, but they could have. But they have a lot of the same issues that people are kind of chiding the Buckeyes about. A new quarterback, granted, Drew Aller has played a lot more than Kyle McCord has. They have their own line issues. And the one thing is, and I'm going to steal something that Darren Graham said in the chat, no one has ever done so little with so much than James Franklin. They just seem to stub their toe on the regular. And yeah, I think that they do deserve a seat at the table, but like that really bad middle seat where you're kind of stuck between two people and you can't really reach anything in front of you. I mean, and it's just they're not elite. They're not elite.
And that's not just your opinion, that's James Franklin's opinion.
That's right. And at that point they were merely great, which I took exception with at the time. They were 3-loss great. Okay. I guess that's great. Okay.
But they were close losses.
They were close losses. Yes,
They were good
That makes
losses.
it better.
They were good
consistently
losses.
losing close. And a
Moral
Rose Bowl
victories,
win,
if you will.
unfortunately, and a Rose Bowl win, unfortunately, is not what it used to be. So, yeah, nice win, of course. And he's won a few BCS games, certainly Fiesta Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl. But those conference games that matter in November have not gone his way, for sure, except for when somebody blocks a kick. Josh Simmons is an offensive tackle out of San Diego State who logged 800 snaps last year. He's got a better passing grade, according to Pro Football Focus, that running block grade. And he was a former four-star that when he came out, he had offers from all over the place, from all over the country. And he is possibly on campus right now. Do we know anything about or feel like that could be a strong possibility of Simmons to Ohio State?
Well,
I think it looks like a very strong possibility to me. Go ahead, Tony.
I was just say, our Mark Givler talked with them. He's got a familiarity with Justin Fry from working out at UCLA's camps, years ago, and likes Fry and likes all of that. So I know it seems like potential is building and momentum is building towards Ohio State. If like the offer comes through and they decide they want to go forward, it sounds like that could be a guy that ends up in Columbus.
Yeah, exactly. With what was said there, I think it's a case of, when you're bringing guys in out of the portal. I mean, it's a two-way interview at this point. I mean, is Simmons is he enthusiastic about Ohio State? I'd say yes. Is Ohio State enthusiastic about Simmons? Well, at least to the point to bring him out. But I think you still need to kind of go through the process, and that nothing's going to be given. But he's certainly going to look at the depth chart, and they'll probably go through some film and things of that nature. It's like there's the opportunity to compete at right tackle, which is the position he played at SDSU. I mean, do you flip him over and have him try and play left if you think he's better than anything that you have at tackle position, protecting the blind side? I would say that if Ohio State greenlights this, that it's something that could come together pretty quickly. And by saying that, if something doesn't come out of this pretty quickly, then I'll start to lose faith that it's going to happen. I think that it's going to be immediate or never.
I agree. I think that they've been very selective in who they've offered and recruited out of the portal. There were some other guys in there, a guy from Houston, a guy from Texas A&M, particularly that they didn't go after. It doesn't feel or doesn't seem like. So perhaps this is the first guy that they saw enter the portal that they thought, this is a guy who could help us. And of course, as you said, that familiarity with Justin Fry, having worked with him, on the field at a camp, presumably at UCLA, he understands a little bit about, what this kid's all about. So 6'6" in the 305-pound range, I think, put on, it seems like about 20, 25 pounds as a freshman there at San Diego State. And, the level of football in the Mountain West is a notch down, obviously, or two from what he would face in the Big Ten. I don't think we have any doubt about that, but still very good football out there. By and large, those teams can knock off some of the Power 5 schools in a given year, no doubt. So I guess, like these guys said, get him on campus, see how it clicks, and if it does, get him in there. They did lose a wide receiver, Jared Burton, left Ohio State. He joined the kicker, Jake Seibert, as post-spring defections via the transfer portal. And the issue there is they are still two guys over the limit of 85 to get down just to 85. And then if they want to take this guy Simmons or Lorenzo Styles Jr. from Notre Dame or anybody else, they have to get rid of even more players beyond just two. So for every guy they take, add 1 to 2, and that's how many guys they got to get rid of. So if they take this guy, it would be 3. If they take this guy in Styles, they've still got to get rid of 4 more players off this roster. So, happy processing, as they say.
And not only do they have to do that, they have to do it in a hurry because the opportunity, the window of getting into the portal is closing here at the end of the month. So I expect to see more players join Caleb Burton, not Jared Burton, as a couple.
I'm sorry.
That was brought up in the chat.
I get my Jareds and my Caleb's all.
I was going to let it slide, but somebody caught it, so I wanted to address it. And yeah,
whoever he is, playing time unaffected.
Well, and that's the thing. He was buddies with Quinn Ewers, who obviously didn't see very long. As I said on the message board over at Buckeye Huddle, if Burton were playing, maybe this wouldn't have been the case. But not playing, not even really dressing in certain instances, and your guy is gone. I mean, all equaled. It's time to go. So that one was not a big surprise, but a couple more certainly need to happen. And with Lorenzo Styles Jr. looking pretty positive, in my opinion, and at least one offensive lineman, yeah, I think 4+ is still the number.
Yeah, and they can leave after the window, and I don't think Ohio State's going to keep them from being able to play. Like, they'll sign whatever waiver they need to, but it's still surprising that they've only had 2 transfers at this point from spring, because there have to be guys that understand you are never playing here, and because they haven't yet, and they're in their 3rd or 4th year at this point. Is this like the Office Space guy that's just hanging out with a stapler at this point and just keeps getting moved off, but he still just hangs in? And so yeah, they're whether those guys get medicaled or what, they're some guys have to move on, and the numbers always work out. And really, I think this number also, I think, includes assuming the new long snapper is a scholarship player, and there may be another, like, a former walk-on that is now on scholarship or something of that nature. Like, they could maybe maneuver things to get down to 85 without dropping anybody right now. Maybe have to let one guy go, but it's there are 10 guys who are never going to play, who could go at any point, and everybody would welcome them. Welcome. This is the part of the scenario where all of these players have been given agency, and they've taken ownership of their rights to move on, and then the coaches can use that as momentum. Like, yep, go find your next stop, go find your happiness, and this is your strength, your choice to move on. Remember that, and you can go play somewhere else next year. It just can't be here. Now, can they do it in a more cordial manner than Deion Sanders? Perhaps.
Well, that's where I was going to go. There's no room in the portal because the whole Colorado team is in the portal right now. I was trying to make the segue so badly, and I was just like, come on, Tony. No room in the portal. Everybody from CU is there right now. And what is it, like 20 players from like the original roster still left or something? And I just think the timing of everything coming out of the spring game. And then Deion, I'm going to have to look it up, had, some philosophical tweet about, work and everything else. I mean, this is either going to be like the greatest turnaround or the greatest disaster since the Hindenburg. I mean, it's going to be epic one way or the other.
Option 2 is my opinion. At least this year it's going to be option 2, because you can't put a football team together with 30 guys. So, and a bunch of Division II guys. So
it's crazy because he's still telling people he's still cutting players at this point, and they have nobody left. And so they're going to have to bring in 60 odd players from the recruiting class and from the portal. And I'm not ready to write him off as a complete failure. He's just going about it in a much different manner than anybody else who's ever been successful has done it. Now, we have seen guys like when Mark D'Antonio took over Cincinnati, he said to all of his commitments, you're no longer committed here. We're going to re-recruit you. Some of you guys, we will extend scholarship offers to. But this is to the team, like, we are no longer committed to you. You can go. I'm bringing in people to replace you. And, I appreciate some of the guys using the spring game to put out their tape, basically, because, Deion Sanders is not allowing the players to take their tape with them. So, like the receiver who had a bunch of catches for, 160 yards or whatever, everybody got to see him because ESPN was airing the spring game, and so this is like an infomercial for the guys who were leaving, and he's the guy that maybe made the most of it, and he's the guy that they wanted to keep, and so he's like, you know what, it's not really my thing here. I don't know if I feel the culture, and not that there is a culture right now, because we've seen Texas A&M completely fail with the mercenary aspect of NIL. What is this going to look like in Colorado this year? And as I've said before, their first 6 games they could be 0-6. You start out with at TCU, then you've got Nebraska at home, then you've got Colorado State at home, but you better not lose that game, because that's that's a statement, in-state type of thing. They've got USC, they've got Oregon, and I think they have Arizona State. So if this is a complete mess, it's going to get even messier.
I found.
Well, I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin. I was just going to say, I think
here was his tweet. Everybody wants to sit at the table and eat, but ain't nobody wants to work to provide anything on the table, including the food. I don't believe in luck. I believe in hard work. The harder and smarter I work, the more opportunities present themselves. Either you run today or today runs you. I run today. # Coach Prime.
I had an NFL scout tell me that they've had other coworkers like go to Jackson State and watch practice, and Deion wasn't even there.
I believe that. Yeah, it's going to be something. I'm not optimistic it's going to work out real well there, and you got to build a team at some point, and for him to want guys to leave but not give them the opportunity to make the most of that with their practice tape or whatever, that's pretty galling to me. That's pretty galling. So yeah,
I read about that this morning, that they're
hard to root for a guy like that.
Not letting players have their film to go out and be able to pursue these other opportunities after you run them is pretty sketch, because we've obviously seen great purges before in programs, but generally, you're going to try and assist these players to land somewhere, but just doing this out of, arrogance. I don't know, malice. I mean, what is it being done out of? But I mean, it serves no purpose. Your damn spring game was on ESPN. So it's not like you're hiding any state secrets, unless they're coming out with some sort of new formations or something that's like completely unheard of. I don't know what the purpose is.
Let's not pretend that being on ESPN is the end all be all. What's the Ohio high school program that was on there a few years ago?
Bishop
Sycamore.
Bishop Sycamore. So they were also on ESPN for everyone to see, and sometimes when you're on ESPN for everyone to see, it does not go well. One of the things, and I mentioned this on yesterday's Buckeye Weekly, is you guys remember this when Urban Meyer took over, and he has said before, like, when you take over a new team, the players in that room, the players on the team are no longer the other guys, the other coaches' guys. Those are your guys. They're not somebody else's players. Those are your players. And to hear all of these Colorado players who have been moved on and dispatched and cut, talk about, like, the ones that they didn't want, they weren't talked to during practice. They weren't, the instruction wasn't there. It was just a bunch of criticism. And so I don't think we view Urban Meyer as an old school guy. Nick Saban as an old school guy. Nick Saban has had to grow, and he has matured or dematured. I don't know the right terminology. He's gotten younger as he's gotten older and dealing with these players. Deion Sanders is going to have to learn old school isn't going to work. And especially as players can leave willy-nilly, it's not going to work. So he's going to have to change. But first he has to learn before he can change. And so he'll learn, and we'll see if he's there long enough to change. And if he's successful in year 2, he'll go somewhere else and watch the exodus of players from that place if he doesn't want them.
The lens at Jackson State was not nearly as wide and bright as the one that's going to be at Colorado. So, I mean, he may have gone in and completely blown up Jackson State when he took over there. And, I mean, obviously he found success, but You know, he's in a much larger and deeper sandbox now.
Well, like what you laid out for us, Kevin, that's going to come back and bite him. You know, he may be able to deal with the current players like that and fix this team, possibly this current team. But if you continue to treat individuals like that, and you know the player culture is what it is, and obviously it's out there for everyone to talk about and everyone to uh, make their stories known, it's just going to come back to bite him. And I just think that people are talking about this great culture there, and Tony brings it up in regards to what culture, and that's how I approach it as well. People are confusing personality and culture. He's a personality. He's not built a culture. It looks good on the TV show on Saturday with the snow flying in the packed house and him running around and laughing and talking to Chris Fowler. That looks great, but that's not a culture. That's him being a personality.
Culture is what happens when there are no practices and there are no games. The culture right now is leaving. It's out the door. Like that's the culture right now. It's transient. They're a bunch of hobos, basically.
I think he is banking on that his sheer personality, his magnetism is just going to draw in whomever he wants. And therefore he walked in there and said, 80% of these players plus aren't at my standard. So you're gone, and because I can go get whomever I want.
Yeah. Going in and getting Travis Hunter to Jackson State and then bringing him with you to Colorado is one thing. But the thing is, you look at these guys, all these guys that he cut. How is that going to fly at these schools that these guys were at? I mean, where their head coach is still there, and he's going to remember how little Jimmy got, completely dicked over. And do you think that coach is going to want to send his 4-star guy to Colorado? I mean, yeah, he's not going to be able to say you're absolutely not going to Colorado, but you need to make allies out of high school coaches and things of that nature. And I just think that that's one of these things where, when you're not at practice because you're shooting Aflac commercials and things like that, I don't think that there are things that you think about grasping. So I don't know. I mean, I'm here for the entertainment. I'm rooting for Deion to work. A lot of people have been like, why do you hate Deion? Why are you rooting against him? I'm not, but I'm a realist, and I see what's happening, and every new stumble and foible just adds to what it is that I've been saying, that his method of operation is not successful at this point of what he's doing. I can see how this one's going to end. I've seen this movie before.
Well, and Travis Hunter playing both ways. Maybe he's playing at 90% both ways in FCS. You translate that to what he's going to be like at Colorado, and if he's 70% of what he could be at corner and 70% of what he could be at receiver, it's not good enough. And there are going to be some issues there as well. You can't. And I keep saying, like, he's not going to be the only two-way player, because they're going to have, I don't know, 70 players, and maybe how does he even view walk-ons? Because they're not good enough to play, but now you need them. Like, how does he treat those guys? Like, what's how do you treat the least of us? Deion Sanders. How do you treat the least of your players? And I think we've seen.
Well, I think if you look at his career, even as a player, even though he played what some people consider to be the ultimate team sport, he played a very isolated position in a very isolated way and made it all about himself. He treated himself and approached the game as a mercenary, went to the Cowboys, went to the Niners when the paycheck was there, and he thought he could bring a championship, which he delivered on. Absolutely. He had enormous, generational talent, and did the same thing with the juggling the football and the baseball at the same time, and disregarding, in a sense, teammates and responsibilities in both locations. And then he moved on to TV. So he's only in the last 4 or 5 years been a head coach. And based on, what we all know and what you guys have addressed, he hasn't taken that on as a traditional coach that cares about his players and cares about his organization and the school. So,
Can I share 2 Dion stories?
Absolutely.
The first one, I was at Riverfront Stadium, and he's playing for the Atlanta Braves, and he hit a gapper, and I just watched him run, and it was unlike anything you ever saw. Just first base, second base, stand-up triple. I mean, just awe-inspiring just to watch him run. Then the Reds, he was playing a spring training game for the Reds, and he dropped a bunt, and he's headed down the first base line, and they threw it away. So he goes to second base. They still haven't retrieved it. So he goes on to third base, and the throw comes in and gets away from somebody, and he just got away from them enough for him to come all the way around on a ball that he maybe hit 10 feet. So that was one of the all-timers. A guy came all the way around on a bunt that you're never, ever going to see that. Of course, it was in a spring training game, so it didn't count. It certainly wasn't a home run. It was probably an error, and an error, but
Little league home run.
He pulled that off. He hit the ball 10 feet and scored on it. So, yeah, pretty amazing.
I will say one other thing. Jim Tressel said this once, and I've seen other coaches say it.
Is it about Dion?
It applies. It applies that players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I don't think Dion has shown any caring towards his players at this point. And he's going to have to start before they start buying in.
Yep.
So we wrap up a Buckeye show with a lot on Deion Sanders, but that is the talk of college football. Absolutely it is. And maybe we'll do a little bit more on the voice of college football on Deion. I've kind of avoided it to a certain extent just because I didn't want to address it. But hey, that's where the talk is. So we will go there at some point. Tony, what do you got working this week?
You put me on the spot, Mark. Just doing positional recaps of how spring went, working on tight ends today. Dropped a show yesterday, listener question show. Half of it was about Deion and talking about it. Will the Buckeyes go undefeated this season or not? And so just answering questions like that. And that's about it right now at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also, Buckeye Weekly is the podcast. And then I'm going to be recording a show on the CFP playbook today discussing the quarterback situations at Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State.
Kevin.
Yeah, I'm going to be producing a show here in a little bit about the quarterback situations at Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. I've been putting in some extra hours working over at CFP Playbook, trying to get some things in order over there. And NFL drafts tomorrow night, 3-day affair. I'm looking forward to that. Lots of coverage. I'm sure I'll do a live stream of some sort of my thoughts on the picks, at least for the first 2 days, that third day on Saturday when the announcers start talking about a ham sandwich that they had for lunch and we missed 12 picks. I get really frustrated. And for those who are asking, I will be watching on NFL Network. I do not want to, by mistake, have to listen to Chris Berman.
Back.
Berman's not been on that broadcast for a while, has he?
I don't think so.
I don't know, but I'm not risking it. I'm not risking it because it's just. I'm sure he's a wonderful fella, but that shtick has gone.
Basically, my deal on Berman was once I got to college, like I thought Berman was hilarious with the baseball nicknames. Of course, I just thought that was the greatest thing in the world when I was like 14. And then I went to college and I started to learn the craft a little bit. And then I figured, this guy's really, if he's not your flavor, then there are some holes in his game. But I could say the same for myself.
Steve.
Yes, NFL draft. As Jim James is telling us in the chat, we need these guys on more. So we want to make an announcement. We're doing the Buckeyes show each and every day at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah, they'll be back here tomorrow. Yes, of course. Steve, what's going on?
Just trying to keep above ground here. Now that spring football's over, We're doing a lot of different things at our site, bucknuts.com, kind of looking toward the fall, and also just trying to stay on top of recruiting and everything else that's going on. Doing some basketball stuff as well now that coaches are able to get out on the road and do observation and these kind of things. So a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You'll find it all at bucknuts.com. I don't have any doubt about that.
I am not an NFL draft guy when it comes to the preparation of the draft, but once they hit the air, yes, I am sold. I'm all in. It's one of my favorite events of the year. And unlike Kevin, I got to get my dose of Mel. I got to hear from Mel Kiper.
Todd.
The worst thing that happened to the draft was Mike Mayock going to the Raiders and losing him off of NFL Network, because I always loved listening to Mayock.
Yes, he's
Rich Eisen. Rich
Daniel
Eisen.
Jeremiah is really good.
Yeah. But I'm with you. Like, I like the NFL Network's product. I wish Mel was on the NFL Network. But Mel has been my guy since me and my brother would go and watch him in the 80s, on ESPN when nobody cared about the NFL draft. And then in college, we would go to the bar and say, hey, can you turn the NFL draft on? And people would be like, why?
I always tell this story. One of my favorite NFL draft stories. I was at Travel Basketball Kent on the day of the draft. The Browns did not have a first round pick. I drive by the bar. There are two Browns guys in full Browns regalia standing outside the bar having a heater, full uniform, ready to go, and the Browns didn't even have a first round pick. So this is Christmas, and we don't have one this year either, obviously, because of team massage. But this is Christmas in April. Yeah,
I'm going to date myself, but when I was in grade school, the NFL draft was a weekday, like a Tuesday afternoon.
Wow.
And, my mom let me stay home from school to watch the NFL draft every year.
Nice. Good mom.
Mom knows.
To watch Price is Right. And Antoine, I promise I'll get a show going here soon so we can continue the debate. I've been pretty bad about it here recently.
For Steve Hellwagon, Kevin Noon, Tony Gerdeman, they are the best. We appreciate them being here, and we'll be back here next week for Buckeyes Live, and see you then.